What is going on, New York Giant fans? Welcome back to another video here on the Big Blue in the Bronx YouTube channel. Hit the like button, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Share this out, do all the good stuff. A lot of training camp recaps coming your way within the next few days. Trade deadline videos for the Yankees, etc., etc. And that's another reason to be here. Hit the subscribe button, share out, do all the good stuff. So, this video shouldn't take too long because there wasn't too many meat and potato items in this episode of Hard Knocks by HBO on the New York Football Giants, but of course we're going to get into it. And there's not really separate sections. It's really based into one thing. There might be a part or two that's kind of separate, but it all links to the same thing, which is the draft plan for the New York Football Giants. And like one of the only things that was separate from what the meat and potatoes were of this episode is that they showed the pro days in the beginning of the Giants scouts going to Notre Dame for Joe Alt, LSU for Jayden Daniels and Malik Nabers, and Theo Johnson, Penn State, and also Carmen Bricilla speaking to Saquon Barkley about the acquisitions on the offensive line and all these other different things. So the meat and potatoes, again, I'll say that, how many times, was the decision whether the New York Giants should go out there and trade up for a quarterback or they should stick at 6 with a wide receiver. So in the beginning of the episode, Shane tells Chris Mara, who's one of the executives in the front office, "We still believe in you." He's telling Chris Mara what he told Daniel Jones. Shane says, "We still believe in you, but you've missed how many games in the 2 years that I've been here? ACL, neck, that's the reality. We didn't play well before you got hurt. We may not take a QB, but we're still going through the process." So they're going through the process, and that's a fair assessment, right? Obviously, we knew that was going to happen post Daniel Jones getting injured and all this sort of stuff because he didn't play well and he was injured. And not to mention, you have a very much stacked quarterback class, especially in the top 3 with Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, and Drake May. So they attended the pro days, and they also had their fair share of wide receivers in. They didn't really show anything else. Oh, we brought this other guy in. It was mainly around Jayden Daniels, Drake May, Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison, and Malik Nabers. And Caleb Williams was also on their board, but he was going first overall, so they really didn't, pay too much attention to him. So Mike Groh, this is during the top 30 visits that New York Giants had. They pick 30 players that they want to have in their building, and they put all the wide receivers that they wanted within the first round in the same room on the same day. And Mike Groh just went over film with them, and he started testing them. And Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze, and Marvin Harrison Jr. And then, of course, they pulled them separately into Brian Daboll and Joe Shane's office, talking about, relocation. Malik Nabers about his frustrations and how to channel that properly. Rome Odunze about what do you look for in a character of a player, which I like because Rome Odunze is very much a leader, and he was at Washington. And obviously they went on and explained that. So you kind of grind into the quarterback scenario here and, the trade-ups and this, that, and the third before we even get to New England. And Joe Shane asked Brian Daboll and anyone around the room, I think he asked Dennis Hickey. He also asked Brian Daboll, of course, would you trade up for Jayden Daniels? And Daboll says, yeah, I would trade up for Jayden Daniels. And I find it interesting. Now, a lot of people would say, why would you take this away from that? Because it's just a comment he made. Jayden Daniels walks in to the Shane office, and Daboll's there, and he's like, my guy. He dabs him up, and he says, well, you want to be here, right? So I have a little theory about that as we move along. So Shane then turns to Mike Kafka and says, okay, would you trade up for Drake May? He goes, well, you got to have a guy that you believe in. You go up and get him, meaning Drake May. And the Giants staff and scouts looked at least 10 different draft classes with first-round quarterbacks. Dating back to 2014, they looked at the Mahomes class. They looked at the Darnold class, the Burrow class, everything from 2014 down they looked at, and they measured, hey, how many of these guys actually worked out? And then so on and so forth, and they did their evaluations. And Joe Schoen asked Brian Dable, he just says, what do you take away from this? He goes, well, you take your CJ Stroud. Because Stroud, no matter what, was the number one quarterback in the 23 draft. Yeah, it was the 23 draft. It was, no matter what, CJ Stroud was the best quarterback. Now, of course, you had the Panthers and David Tepper meddled, and we all know that story, and they picked Bryce Young. But CJ Stroud was the best quarterback. And that was Brian Dable's vision. Get the best quarterback and make sure he fits your system and so on and so forth. And then we moved on in the episode to where it's like the latter part and Joe Schoen starts stressing out on draft day about the quarterback situation or wide receiver at 6. And John Mara walks in. He goes, okay, what's going on? What is your plan? And Schoen says, look, I'm going to call Elliott Wolf, and then we're going to make sure everything's good with you. And we're not looking to give something up in terms of a trade package that's historic, but, obviously let us know what you're going to do. And John Mara, though he stated in the episode earlier that, hey, listen, I'm just, skeptical of giving up this many assets for a quarterback, kind of like I was 20 years ago. I'm speaking in the terms of John Mara. Of course, with the Ernie Accorsi and trading for Eli Manning and the stuff they gave up. And Accorsi said in the documentary, because it wasn't on Hard Knocks, it was in the documentary that Hard Knocks showed, he said, well, there's not really a price when you win, and you better hit. So as far as that goes, he calls Elliott Wolf and he says, besides the 1st and 25, what else do you want? And Elliott Wolf turns around and says, we are pretty happy sitting here and picking. So there's nothing really you could do there. And, you could make your arguments of, Joe Schoen should have at least offered something to see if Elliott Wolf would budge. But also at the same time, the Giants were at 6. A lot of people wanted some of the top 3 quarterbacks, as I did. And the Giants were not really in that position, though we had to hype ourselves up with a little false hope. There was not really much work done on McCarthy. There was not much work done on Penix via the episode. And as far as the wide receivers were concerned, I think Joe Schoen was set on Malik Nabers. And I know Brian Dable was too, because they like his personality, they like his character, they like his temper as long as it's channeled correctly. They love his talent too. And Brian Dable was bringing up, he goes, yeah, I was on the phone with Nick Saban, and he said some of the guys that have pissed him off in the last few years in terms of they destroy Alabama is Brock Bowers and Malik Nabers being the first. So they were dead set on Malik Nabers once that whole scenario with trading up for a quarterback went out the window, because you were not getting to Washington, you were not getting the Bears, and obviously what happened with New England happened with New England. And they were lining up the draft strategies, and they showed Tisch and they showed John Mara, and they said, look, here's what we're going to do. There was some extra stuff that I'm not going to include because I forgot a little bit of it, but at the same time, it's not really relevant. That obviously they were calling Monty Ossenfort. They were going to see, trade packages or whatnot, and, they were sticking, and the Giants were going to stick at 6. But they were going to trade back if Nabers was off the board. Odunze, they like him, but if someone wants to move up to 6 for him, they'll take the assets and build the team around Daniel, and then if Odunze is there later, they could take him, or they could take Brock Bowers, and they can maneuver because the Bears and the Falcons were in those conversations. So that's as far as that goes, and my little theory is this. I think Joe Schoen wanted Drake May, and I think Brian Dable wanted Jaden Daniels. Now, take this again with a grain of salt, but we see the scene where he's with his kids. Now, of course, they all pick quarterbacks. Very funny. And he says to his youngest, Harper, he goes, okay, I'm going to write down 4 names, and you're going to pick who you want me to draft. Drake May, Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, and there was somebody else. I don't know who it was. It might have been Odunze. Jaden Daniels was not on that list. So I will say it would have been very, very interesting if they got whatever pick it was, the second or the third, and they would have to debate over which quarterback they want, because maybe there was a little bit of a disconnect. Not that it matters, but it's just an interesting point to bring up. And then, of course, what I mentioned earlier, Brian Daboll, Jayden Daniels comes in, he goes, my guy, and, do you want to be here? So the situation is what the situation is. Hopefully the Giants are not back at 6, but, my hopes are very grim. We'll see what happens during the season. We'll see what happens overall, because there's a lot of jobs on the line, and that's pretty much that. Daniel Jones will be the starting quarterback until something else happens. Like, comment, subscribe to all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Sorry for the streaminess in the background if you guys see it on the green screen. I'm in the process of getting a new camera because my old camera busted. But nonetheless, folks, like, subscribe, share, do all the good stuff. Peace out, guys. See you later. Stay cool.